Now that we've got our characters all prepped, I want to talk to you guys just really quick about importing them into After Effects and just a couple of things we want to pay attention to when we do this. Now, of course, we want to import our characters as compositions, so they come in already arranged with all their layers and all their layer names, just like we've set them up. But there are two options when we import, and I want to talk to you guys about those two different options. I'm going to go ahead and import a character in two different ways, and we can kind of talk about the differences. So let's go ahead and import our orange guy here. And the first thing we'll do is just import just as a composition. So let's just bring him in just as a composition. Okay. And when we bring him in just as a composition, there he is. If we tab open the folder here, you'll notice that every single image is the entire 6,000 by 6,000 frame with the little piece of art floating in it. So this isn't very efficient because it's actually, as we're rigging and animating, After Effects is having to shove around and manipulate all these big giant layers. It's also done the same thing with the pre-comps, which were our groups in Photoshop, and those pre-comps are also all 6,000 by 6,000. Now let's import that same character, and this time we'll choose Composition Retain Layer Sizes. Now with this import, and you'll notice it looks exactly the same here, but with this import, now you can see when I select the individual parts, they are now fitted around those parts, so it has retained the size of the individual layer rather than the document size. Now this is obviously a lot more efficient. It also has some real advantages in the rigging process. This is generally what I recommend that you do. However, there is one significant reason why you might choose to import the other way, and that is being able to edit on the fly. Let's pretend, for example, that our character suddenly needs to have horns. We've gotten a call from the client, and the character is now a minotaur or something and needs giant horns on its head. And let's say you've already begun the rigging process. You know, most of the time you're not going to be thrown that big a curveball, but let's just say for argument's sake that we've been thrown that particular curveball and we're part of the way through our rigging and we now have to add these crazy horns on this character's head. If we go ahead and double click on the body pre-comp here and select the body layer where we're going to add the horns, we can just hit Command E for edit, and that's going to automatically launch Photoshop for us. And one of the things that's really nice about this is that it automatically will update when we go back into After Effects. And now we can go ahead and paint on our horns. Okay, that's good enough for our demonstration. All right, we're going to save this now, and then we're going to go back to After Effects. That's going to automatically update. And did you see what happened? That shifted down. So let's take a look. Here inside our first composition, where we imported without retaining layer sizes, it's taking into account the entire frame. So when we added the horns, nothing shifted out of place. We didn't lose our position. But inside this comp here, whoops, now we've got a big mess because by making that change, we changed the layer size. We made it longer than it was before, and that shifted it down in the composition. Now, this wouldn't be all that difficult to fix, but it's good to understand that that's what's going to happen if you make an edit this large that changes the size of the artwork in the layer. So if your project is likely to require a lot of editing on the fly, if you have an unpredictable client, or you just want the flexibility to play around with your character as you're rigging and animating, importing without retaining layer sizes might be an option because it will allow you to do crazy stuff like this without throwing things totally out of whack. One thing to be clear though, if you're using the puppet tool, and if we had already put a puppet tool mesh on this figure, even though it didn't shift out of place, we would have to pull that entire mesh off and rebuild the entire puppet tool rig on the chest. And that wouldn't be a walk in the park. So this isn't foolproof. It doesn't save pain and suffering in every case, but it is an option, and it is something that you should be aware of when you're making that decision on how to import. As I said, most of the time I'm going to go with this option, even though this caused a mess here, but I'm expecting that I've got my character design essentially done and pretty well locked in place before I get to the point of rigging or animation. So I'm not likely to be adding horns to anything. And frankly, there are other means to do this that would be slightly less destructive. You could bring in the horns as a separate layer and parent it to the body. There would be other ways around it. So this issue is not really something that comes up all that often. Let's start over with a clean import of this character since we've made kind of a mess here. Now, one of the things we want to do is get our layers really nice and organized here. So first thing I want to do is make sure I'm set to layer name here rather than source name, so we get the nice short layer names that we chose in Photoshop. And then I want to color code these, and I usually color code by body part group. All the left arm pieces are one color, all the leg pieces are another color, and so on. Oops, and I'm just noticing we have a small layering problem here. The left hand and the right hand are kind of sitting right on top of one another. They should be grouped with their compatriots here. So let's take that left hand and we'll put that above the left fingers, and then we'll start getting this color coding set up. Now, it really doesn't matter what colors you choose. I made a little rainbow just because that amuses me, but you can, of course, choose any colors you want. We also want to start getting organized in our project window as well. Now, we're not really very far along here, but it doesn't hurt to sort of get the ball rolling early. So I'm going to make a folder simply called Art, and I'm going to make another folder called Comps. And we're going to just go ahead and grab all the comps that are nested inside here. And the markers. Okay, and we'll drop all those into the comps folder. And we'll be making a lot more pre-comps as we start rigging. And then the rest of the folder goes into Art. And then we're going to go ahead and rename this a Orange Man rig. That's where we're going to build our rig. We're pretty much ready to start rigging here. One last little thing that I'll probably do, I'll go into the marker layer here, and I'm going to grab all these markers and just copy them and paste them right into this comp. Now, why did I do that? Well, here's the thing. These are raster markers, which means they have no snapping value if they are nested inside the pre-comp. I'm still going to hang on to this pre-comp. I'm going to delete it here for now, but I've got it in case for some reason I just want the reference, and I can drag it in for a reference. And we will eventually delete these as well once we're done working with them. But these are going to be really useful because, as you can see when they're highlighted, you'll notice they're giving us good snapping points here. And even though these aren't perfect circles, they'll give us a pretty good rotation point for all these anchors. So with those in place and our coding, color coding done, and our cleanup in our project window ready to stay neat and organized, we are ready to start rigging. Now move on to the exercise video and take a look at the project that we have set up for you.